and you're not looking to purchase something outright. I know gear can be really expensive, so this is just another way we're committed to, getting everybody outside, because we know that gear can be very expensive. Again, if you want to look at pricing and all the gear that we offer, you can go ahead and click on that link as well. A couple of highlights that we have. We do have a ton of camping and backpacking gear, backpacks, bear canisters, sleeping bags, sleeping pads. And with winter sports coming up, we do have a fleet of snowboards that we're really excited to rent out to you guys, get you guys out on the slopes. Another thing that we have is team building. We do a lot of team building out at our challenge center, and we also do private trips for any type of organization that's interested in that. You can go ahead and click on that link for more information. And lastly, we have our adventure trips here. I'll go ahead and click on that. I'm sure you guys heard about that. Look at, there we are, Diversity Outdoor Student Panel right there on the top. We do have a couple of Fun Friday trips left this semester if you want to try something out for free. It is free for students. If you have a friend that's not a student, you can bring them along and it's pretty cheap as well. All of our trips are open to the public. Students just get special pricing. A couple of highlights. We have our intro to mountain biking coming up this weekend. And we do have an Explore Truckee. And we do have our big semesterly trip, the Northern California road trip that's coming up. And that's going to be almost a week-long trip. It runs from Saturday, January 8th to Thursday, January 13th. So just shy of a week by a couple of days. But it's a big trip. We're going to be touring Northern California. We got a lot of cool stuff planned for that. So if you want more details, check out those links, or you can always call us or stop by our office. All right. We will have time for questions at the end. So if you have any questions about Peak Adventures or about the panel in general, we'll be opening that up. Let me go ahead and go back. Okay.
I'm going to jump in real quick, just introduce myself. My name's Tanner. I'll be managing the chat. I also just turned on screen recording, so just make sure everyone's aware that this is being recorded and it will be up later. If you do need any accommodations, let us know and we can hopefully get it transcribed after the fact as well, because I know this real-time transcribing isn't always the best. As I mentioned in the chat, if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. I'll also open the floor at the end if you want to unmute yourself and ask any questions or make any comments. Thanks for coming, and I'm going to hand it back over to Mia.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of intro here. So this is our Diversity in the Outdoors panel. It is a student panel, so we have a couple of guests here. We're going to hear from them, and then at the end, we want it to be kind of like an open conversation. So Peak Adventures is dedicated to promoting more diverse and inclusive outdoor spaces through conversation and representation. This panel discussion will be navigating difficult topics that address these common issues within the outdoor community and hopefully pave the way for a more welcoming and safe space for everybody to enjoy the outdoors. There will be an opportunity for the audience to ask questions at the end. So I want to start off with each of our panelists. I want them to introduce themselves. So with their name, their major here, and their favorite outdoor activities or hobbies that they enjoy.
All right, I guess I'll start off. I'm one of the panelists for today. My name's Thomas Hara. I'm majoring here as computer engineering here at Sac State. I'm a third year here. And I also work at the bike shop down at Peak Adventures. So I would say that my favorite outdoor activity would be cycling. On top of that, you know, there are a few other favorite activities I like doing, which includes, you know, rock climbing as well as snowboarding. And then maybe like another thing I'd like to share is that I'm also Japanese. Both of my parents are originated from Japan.
I'll go next. My name is Esme Plasencia. I'm a graduating senior and a first generation college student. And some of my favorite activities are hiking, backpacking, beachcombing, and just relaxing at the beach.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nu. I'm a kinesiology major here at Sac State with an emphasis on like physical activity and wellness. I'm a graduating senior as well. Some of my favorite outdoor activities include like rock climbing, tennis, and like occasionally I would go biking and camping with my family.
Hi everyone, my name is Austin Brown. I'm also a graduating senior. I'll be graduating this fall. Like you, I'm also a rock climbing attendant at the Wells too. So I enjoy rock climbing in my free time, backpacking and hiking, and then also I enjoy trail maintenance. I work with state parks, so I'm able to help access some trails and get them open to the public. It's a super fun thing to be a part of.
Awesome. I believe that's everybody of our panelists. Thank you guys so much for introducing yourselves. We look forward to hearing from you. Okay, so we're going to start with the first question. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Our first question is, how did you get into your specific outdoor interests and what keeps you interested? This could be like a story on how you started. It could be like a point in which you decided that this is like a hobby that you like to do full time, that sort of thing. Whatever you guys would like to share for this one.
I could go for me. I got into rock climbing at Sac State through the RPTA class with Garrett teaching it. From there, the pandemic hit, so it took a little bit of time to access the outdoors and access gyms in order to rock climb. But when stuff started opening back up, I was able to kind of meet some people and kind of dive into it from there, trying it outdoors and then bringing it back into gyms once gyms were open.
For me, prior to kind of attending college here, I had no experience in the outdoors at all. But I was just looking for a job, and I ended up getting hired into Peak Adventures. And I was, super lucky to get the opportunity to like go on outdoor trips and kind of lead them as well, and as well as using all the outdoor gear equipment that they provide at Peak Adventures. And from there, I just started to kind of increase my experience on the outdoor world and trying to figure out, what I really like doing. Right now, I'm kind of sitting in that bike shop cycling position right now.
For me, I've been playing tennis since I was like in high school. So that was like an outdoor activity that I was doing on and off since I graduated high school. And last summer, there was a point where it got super hot outside, and I'm from the Bay, and there was like a huge like heat wave that hit, and it was just too hot to play tennis. So one of my friends recommended rock climbing to me. And so he took me to the local gym, and I was hooked after like I tried out once. And since then, like I've been going back. I mellowed down for now. I've been climbing for like 5 months, but before like I just kept coming back and I didn't take breaks, but now I'm like I can manage myself better. Yeah.
You have to go on your first outdoor trip recently. How was that?
All right. Oh yeah. So moving here, I've only like climbed indoors, and until like a month or two ago, like my coworkers are all super awesome. They planned this whole trip outdoors, and I was able to climb outdoors for the first time. We're actually might plan to climb again this week, so that's super interesting, super exciting. But that was like a whole different experience as well, because outdoor climbing and indoor climbing are like super different. They're not. They're like completely, I wouldn't say like completely different sports, but they're like pretty different.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys for sharing that. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. So historically, there has been racial discrimination in the outdoor spaces. How do you think that translates into today's surrounding diversity and inclusion issues?
I'll share that it affects people feeling comfortable or safe to go in certain spaces where they're not welcomed. And that's a problem because then people don't have access or have representation to go in that place because there isn't a lot of people like a group of people who will not feel comfortable going, and especially when it comes to doing certain activities.
I think it also greatly kind of impacts how newcomers kind of see it as well. It's kind of hard to get people coming into a community when we have sorts of like situations like this happening a lot from time to time. And it greatly impacts us because we're not getting a lot of the people coming into these communities to figure out what they want to do in the outdoors and such.
Yeah, definitely. Reiterate on both of those points, I think that safety, feeling safe, feeling welcomed is a huge thing when you're starting anything new. And when you don't feel those types of things, it's really hard to like enjoy something or get yourself to do something new. Absolutely. That kind of leads us into our next question. Whoever would like to answer this as well, have you experienced any barriers when trying to get outside? That could be like money, time, cultural differences, accessibility, any type of those things. And do you have a story that you would like to share?
I think like money and time for me, specifically, we're hard getting outdoors, and it's still a challenge. Working 2 jobs and trying to afford the gear, but then also having the time to go outside is very limited. So as a student working and trying to afford the gear, I think having like Peak Adventures and the services that they provide help students have access to a lot of those things that are very difficult to reach without those um, things that you can access, because the gear is really expensive if you're getting into specialized biking or kayaking, climbing, anything like that, especially backpacking too. They all require a lot of money to get into most of the time.
So for me, I'm bilingual, so sometimes my English gets jumbled up a lot. And from there comes a language barrier that I tend to kind of bump into a lot from time to time, and especially when I'm like in an outdoor space. If I can't say like a right word correctly, or just like mess up my English really bad, I get pretty frustrated, and usually that tends to carry on throughout the entirety of the trip.
For me, it would be money and lack of experience. Like I mentioned earlier, like I recently got into this hobby of rock climbing, and I had no experience with outdoor climbing, and being in such a great community, I was able to experience that. Otherwise, like I wouldn't have known where to start with outdoor climbing. Like I know there's a lot of gear that goes into it, and I didn't know what to get, or like I didn't want to invest in something that I could potentially not like and enjoy. And so just having the services here, especially with Peak Adventures, like Austin mentioned, like we're able to put in like a good amount, like a fee, but we're able to try out these different hobbies. And in the end, if we end up really enjoying it, then later on we can invest in the equipment. Yeah.
I would like to add, not also about first time experience, but not knowing where to go or having that information of trails to go to. I think that was hard and transportation because I didn't have a car, and time was also a big one. But I think if you connect with people who do those activities that you want to do, and you reach out and you say, hey, I'd like to go with you to this place, so you're not on your own, it makes you feel more comfortable. And also, you go together, so and you're not alone. And I would say um, it also helps you save on gas if you're carpooling. So if you think of ways to make it easier for yourself, and then you also get the social aspect of meeting people or going outside, like trying something new, I think that's like a way to make it easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. I think a big thing that you guys all talked about is community. Finding a community of like-minded people and getting people to share those interests with you. It's always easier when you have people to go out with. Nobody wants to go out and experience these things alone. I also like to thank you guys all for shouting out Peak Adventures. You all seem to use our services, and that's great. We definitely like to hear that when people are using our gear to try something out. And it's much more affordable than going out and purchasing full amounts of gear sets, which can be so expensive. But let's go ahead and move on to the next question. So has there ever been a time where you felt unsafe or unwelcome in an outdoor space? And if you have a story to share about that.
Okay, sorry, my mic wasn't unmuting there. But so for me, I think especially like in the cycling community, there's a huge age difference that's happening. And for me, I'm like the younger half, and then there's the older half. Sometimes I feel like there's way too many people who are like, way too well of age compared to me, that like, sometimes it's hard to kind of connect with them, usually because, being young kind of makes it look like, you're not reliable in terms of like a reliable source. Sometimes it's kind of hard to deal with people who think that they know more than you as well, especially in the cycling community.
I can clarify that question a little bit too. It doesn't have to be physically unsafe. It can be emotionally unsafe as well, if that helps spark any thoughts.
I'll share that as a young woman, as a teenager, my mom would always tell me not to go out by myself, even though I lived only a couple blocks from the beach. And I had been there before multiple times, and I really enjoyed going out there. It was my place where I felt safe and comfortable to be outside. And it's just really disempowering when you hear that you can't do this, like you can't do this on your own. And I think we need to change that narrative about women not being able to do things alone, because it doesn't empower women to go out and do things for themselves, or go out of their comfort zone on their own to try new things. And I've also heard comments before said to me by a family friend who said, you wouldn't want to go out here in the woods like by yourself, like when I was hiking with my family and them. And they said, because if a man like me comes out here and sees a pretty young lady out here, and I just thought, this is not okay. It made me feel really uncomfortable. And I think just calling people out when they say things that make you feel uncomfortable is a way for them to stop changing those words said to women.
I also like to add on to like this question here. I think specifically because of the pandemic that's happening right now, a few places don't have mandatory masks that are happening from place to place. And sometimes, you know, I feel like that makes both me and a lot of other people feel unsafe to be there specifically. It's kind of, makes it hard for me to kind of bring my family into these outdoor spaces as well, just because not a lot of people are being cautious around these times, and specifically in like the outdoor spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those are really like very different, but like great barriers and like situations to bring up. Very valid. Thank you guys all for sharing. That kind of leads into the next question. It kind of goes into like representation, which is another like mental barrier, kind of how Tanner expressed. Have you ever felt that you aren't represented or included in an outdoor community? And how do you feel or react to these instances? If anybody has something to share on that.
I would go for me, with the question being, do you feel like you aren't represented? I would say that I am represented in the climbing community, because historically the climbing community has been comprised of straight white men. When we know that like there's a full base that would like to climb, I think climbing as a whole has the tendency to leave out those other people. I think the community has a long way to come as far as like bringing more people into that community. I think I'm definitely privileged in where I stand in the community, but I would like to see our community shift into a more like not so inclusive. It comes off of a little underrepresented.
For me, I think I talked about, you know, like the huge age differences between, you know, within the outdoor spaces. I feel like I think at least the younger community is represented, especially by Peak Adventures. Just because, you know, Peak Adventures is located on a college campus, it makes it super easy for really young kids that just graduated out of high school to kind of, you know, jump into like their first outdoor activity and such. And you know, it gives people the opportunity to kind of blossom and figure out what they want to do for the outdoor community, especially at the bike shop as well. We've got, you know, quite a few young kids coming in and figuring out what they want to do. And from there, you know, people are creating clubs and stuff all around campus. And so I think that's actually a really good representation that's happening on campus.
I'll also add, I felt unrepresented in other activities that I've participated in, like bird watching, backpacking. I had felt that before. I've been in spaces where I was the only person of color, or worked with certain organizations where I was one of the only persons of color. And I would say that there's a lot of work that needs to be done with community outreach for organizations to reach out to different communities using their language, reaching out to them where they're at, and not expecting for people to join those activities if they're not represented or it's not something that they have much knowledge of. So I think with community outreach, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with creating events that just create opportunities for people to be there and feel represented or be represented.
Yeah, definitely. That also kind of goes into like a sub question for this one. You kind of touched on it about how the industry in general can participate in diversification and inclusion. So you're talking about community outreach, which is a great way to improve, you know, the inclusivity into outdoor spaces. Does anybody have any other ideas on how industry can participate in that?
Like using social media to highlight people who, like persons of color who take part in those activities, changing the narrative from saying like only certain people are into hiking, and having that be a class on race or on gender. And then also like within our park systems, state parks, national parks, stuff like that, hiring a more diverse crew. That way when person of color goes to the park, they feel represented by the staff there as well. So people who recreate in that park can see that everyone enjoys the park, not just a certain type of person.
Yeah, definitely. Those are some great points. I think when we do talk about diversity and inclusion, they are such like buzzwords now. I think that getting more people within the field, hiring, definitely big points when we talk about that kind of stuff. We're going to go back and touch on a topic that Thomas kind of brought up about the pandemic. How have you adapted your outdoor interest to the pandemic? And also like this kind of goes hand in hand. I feel like the outdoors was a big like safe haven for people during the pandemic. You know, we were stuck inside and the outdoors was like where people escaped for the most part. So with the influx of first time participants in outdoor spaces, what are some helpful recommendations for newcomers?
Like Mia mentioned, like the pandemic really pushed people out of their homes and out into the outdoors. And for me, like it really helped me get outdoors more. I played a lot of tennis over the summer just to keep myself mentally sane. I didn't want to stay indoors all day. And so it was really nice being able to participate in tennis and just seeing my community do the same. The only downside of that was like it was hard to find an open court most of the time because like everyone was just gathered outside and they were, you know, they all had the same idea of just playing tennis because tennis was like a good outdoor activity where you weren't really close to any of other like anyone else and there's like distance between people. And so that was the only downside. Other than that, like with my family as well, they made an effort to plan more outdoor activities. So we were able to go out biking and camping more often than we usually do. And it was nice being able to see a lot of families outside and, you know, they kept to themselves, but it was just very inviting to see everyone out there and enjoying nature.
I think for me, especially in the cycling community, the pandemic really had like a huge amount of people coming in and purchasing bikes and bike parts and such that we were still suffering from a lot of bikes and bike part shortages. So it's really hard to kind of figure out, you know, oh, like where can I buy a bike or where can I buy parts for my bike and such. So, I mean, you know, for me, what I like to recommend is probably to figure out, you know, if any of your friends have any equipment that they can actually lend to you and such. For me, you know, I have a couple of bicycles that I have myself that I can even loan out to my friends. So I've done that a couple of times. I even went to friends and went mountain biking with them and such, just because they had multiple bikes and everything and all that. So the pandemic, you know, really does make this whole situation a little bit struggling. But again, you know, it's good to see that we can still pull through it all.
With the pandemic, it definitely brought a huge influx of outdoor recreators that have never been outside before. What I would say is that, like, I'm super stoked on people coming outdoors for the first time, but still maintaining the leave no trace policy and being mindful of our outdoor spaces and how to recreate in them. is a huge concept because over the past 2 years with the pandemic, we've seen like a lot of trash get left in our trail systems, and then just not left accordingly. So just doing some research before getting out on the trail and learning about some ethics that go into maintaining our trail systems, and then also just checking to see if the place that you're going is closed, being mindful of those closures, and just doing some research on the location before you get there, just to make sure you're all set and ready to go for a good time.
I'll share that when the pandemic started, I moved back to my hometown from Sacramento, and I stayed there until this semester. I came back, but I wasn't backpacking as much, but I still did a lot of hiking because that was the most accessible for me. And there was a lot of places close to my hometown that I hadn't been to before or explored. So I saw that as an opportunity to get more connected to the place where I grew up. And I also started doing other outdoor activities I hadn't really done as often. Like I would go kayaking with friends that had the gear, or I would also do gardening like at my family or friends. And I got into other activities I didn't always do, but it still made me feel connected to the outdoors. And there's just a lot of different activities I could go on about, but just getting curious and finding new ways of where you feel connected to the outdoors, I would say, is how you can adapt.
Yeah, those are all wonderful responses, you guys. Okay. That's going to lead into our next question. Moving forward, how do you or others promote more affirming outdoor spaces? And how would you ask allies to contribute to these spaces as well?
I think I kind of want to go back to that answer that I did before about how the campus is also kind of really good at representing the young people around. I think creating clubs and such is a really great idea on figuring out the type of community that people want, especially if you're trying to kind of target a specific kind of people, like age group as well as ethnicity, or even some sort of a group of people specific.
You muted yourself.
I was talking about how various ethnics and marginalized groups can also kind of attend these certain like clubs and general meetings. I think might be a really good way of kind of promoting more affirming outdoor spaces and such.
I'll add that I would encourage more people to go to different organizations so they could try out different activities and see what they like to do and meet new people and network. Something that I did was start a chapter of Latino outdoors in my hometown because I felt like there was a need. Like growing up there, I didn't really know or have too many connections as a young person to know what there was to do out there. Like I didn't know that there was surfing or different trail. Like I didn't know the different trails or activities to do. And so I thought this would be an opportunity as for me to step in as a leader from my past experiences in the outdoors to encourage and bring more people into the outdoors and community. And I would ask allies to support and partner in opportunities where we're working together in the effort and not having so many different people trying to do different things when we can work together and make it easier for people to go to those spaces.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'd kind of like to add to that before we move on. I think conversations like this really help. I think it's a big start to have open, honest conversations. And I ask the allies, listen and that they try to take in what different people are trying to say, that sort of thing. So moving on, let's see. What are some misconceptions that people have about the outdoors, and how can individuals in recreation combat these misconceptions to be more inclusive?
I think people think that the outdoors isn't so hygienic. So I think hygiene is quite a very controversial topic when talking about the outdoors, especially when you're going backpacking and such. Sometimes people want to stay clean. And with it, I kind of want to add on about, the whole pandemic thing as well. I think, keeping masks on throughout the trails and such is actually, a way to improve the hygiene kind of misconception that's going on out there, especially because, humans are gross, at least how I like to think about it. And, in order to kind of protect the environment from you, I think it's a really good way to kind of keep yourself clean while out on the trails and such, as well as, keeping yourself away from others. If you feel like you are also kind of endangering like the nature around.
I know I'm not on the panel, but can I add a comment?
Absolutely.
One of my not favorite, but a misconception that I always like to advocate for is that the outdoors is rock climbing and hiking and downhill mountain biking. Like the outdoors is going and gardening or going on a walk around your block, or taking a minute on your walk to go get the mail to like notice a tree. Like the outdoors doesn't have to include gear. Like it's just getting outside and taking a minute to notice this awesome world we live on. And I don't think enough people like really have the view of being outdoorsy as that. It's like, oh, I'm outdoorsy, I'm a rock climber. So I just want to throw out there, like the outdoors is whatever it means to you, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
That's a funny point that you mentioned, because I actually like asked one of my housemates when I was doing like writing down my bio. I was like, is tennis an outdoor activity? And she was like, yeah, absolutely it is. And I was just like thinking, like, when I was reading everyone else's panels or everyone else's bios, and everyone was putting like rock climbing, backpacking, camping, and I was like, tennis is like a sport, but it is outside. And so that was like a pretty good point. I had different definition of what like outdoors was like compared to everyone else compared to everyone else, and just very like just increasing my knowledge on the many other different outdoor activities helps me in creating a different definition of what it is and what it can be.
to add on to that, things like what we define as outdoor spaces. A lot of times we have this narrative that they're Yosemite, like my background, and they're all these places super far away and that are hard to access. But being outdoors, I mean, it's wherever you want to be. We have so many open space areas in Sacramento along the riverbed. So like exploring places close to home, you'd be really surprised on what you can find just in our own little local area.
Awesome. Thank you guys all for sharing. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and go on to our last question. What has helped you get where you are today in outdoor recreation? And what is some advice you have for people that want to set off in a similar direction?
I'll share since one of my focuses in our PTA, recreation parks and tourism administration management is outdoor recreation management. And what got me into that is I worked at a summer camp up north in the Trinity Alps where I was a backpacking counselor for like 2 summers while I've been in college. And through there, I was able to get my experience as a backpacker, like being a camper there for the first time when I was 16 years old. And then I went back when I was 17 and 18. And eventually I became a counselor because I went through their process of being a counselor in training. And I would say that was an introduction for me in the area of outdoor recreation as a career opportunity because I didn't really know about that as a career option until I came to Sacramento State and I started joining in with Peak Adventures, like their programs, and I saw their student scholarship and I applied and I got to go backpacking with them to Point Reyes. And some advice I would say is to ask questions to the people that you know, or I saw somebody in the chat put a question, Taylor, but how would you be able to connect with people who have experience doing something, especially if you don't know anyone who does things like that? And I would say is asking the people who you know do that to ask them, and they may know people who they will connect you to. And I would say that is how you can set off in a similar direction or go into a new direction that you're interested if you just ask the questions, put yourself out there and connect with other people.
Definitely like joining clubs, like or at least seeing what clubs are offered at Sac State or whatever school you're attending, diving into the Peak Adventures trip and stuff that you might be interested in. And as far as like stuff that you can do on your own time, like something that helped me get into it before I was at Sac State was watching YouTube videos, reading REI's expert advice tab. If you want to get into literally like any outdoor activity, REI has a little tab at the top of their screen with expert advice, and it will tell you exactly how to get into that activity, any gear that you would ever need for that activity, and it just lays it all out there for you super nicely. And there's just a lot of free resources online now that you can access, and getting the base level knowledge gives you that like confidence to go up to those clubs that you may not have, having that background information. Then just not being afraid to approach people in the clubs because they're there to gather you and have you join them. They're eager for you to join them.
Yeah, I think, you know, what helped me a lot was Peak Adventures, just because, again, I didn't have any outdoor experience prior to kind of being hired into the job. but Peak Adventures, I think they also host, classes and clinics. So if people are ever, interested at all, they can always, attend those classes, attend those clinics, or even, talk to the people who are, in the office, because usually they have the answers for you if you have anything in mind that you want to talk about.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely. So definitely with Peak Adventures, the outdoors means a lot to us. And what we really want is for people to enjoy it, have the best experience possible. So, a lot of our trips are geared towards beginners. So our mission is, to try to get everybody involved into a place that they're comfortable. So definitely check us out if you're interested in any of our trips, look at them online. And we do offer some free Fun Friday trips, so you get a feel for that type of thing as well. But yeah, so those were all of our questions today. Thank you guys so much for answering all of them. We are going to open the floor now for audience questions. If anybody has a question, feel free to unmute yourself. You're welcome to ask it, or if you want, you can also type it out in the chat. Looks like we do have a question from Taylor. Random question. Has anyone here seen Free Solo starring Alex Honnold? Would any of you go rock climbing without a safety harness?
I wouldn't.
No, I'm good.
For me, I got into rock climbing with the fear of heights, and I still kind of have it. I'm slowly getting over it. I've never seen this film, but I've heard a lot about it, and no, I would not go rock climbing without a safety harness. That's what keeps me snug and comfortable enough to go out and climb. So yeah, that's my take on it.
To a certain height, yes, but during the pandemic, I fell off of a 20-foot like highball boulder and fractured my wrist. I'm gonna stay away from any free soloing. It doesn't seem like it's in the cards for me.
Can I ask a question through like chat through the big Zoom, because it's a little harder to just like type it out.
Yeah, go for it. You can go ahead and ask us any questions.
Okay, folks, if I could ask you to gather again.
So I have this question in terms of like hunting, fishing, all these like practices that have been passed on through tradition.
I've been kind of a zombie, and I remember also that I spent much of my undergraduate career as a zombie. I had vivid zombie memories.
It's a little bit difficult to hear you.
Should I really be driving? Fortunately, I usually wasn't. That's probably good for everyone in West.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Hello? Okay. So my question was in terms of the outdoors fishing and like hunting and stuff like that. Do you guys believe that there should be more resources in terms of like passing on this cultural knowledge between people? Because like all the stuff that I know about fishing and hunting, it's not coming from like a source. It's all just coming from my dad. Do you believe that's like a barrier, like generational? Hello?
Yeah, I would say sorry, there's a little bit echo. I would say that, there is a barrier with that, but there is a lot of resources that you can find. And then be a hunter in the state of California, you do have to pass your hunter safety certificate. In order to do that, you'd have to take a hunter safety course. So those are resources available to learn the ethical way to hunt. And then also fishing resources online are available too. So definitely some options, but it could be a barrier depending on your access to online resources.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I do feel like a lot of the times we think that outdoor recreation and like different types of activities are best done through like advice and word of mouth. It's like, oh, I'm going to learn through somebody who already knows what they're doing, and they learn from somebody who already knows what they're doing. And it's kind of like a trickle down effect. But I do think like, I think it was mentioned before that somebody likes to watch YouTube videos. Like there is a lot of resources available online. And if you do your research, like you'll find what you're looking for. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult at first where to start, but there's a ton of resources out there for specific interests. And it goes beyond, I think, more than like cultural and generational. There is like huge communities dedicated to different outdoor recreation and sports. I think a couple of people have like a hand raised. I don't know how to, anybody can open up and ask a question.
Yeah, so I'm not the most outdoorsy type of person, right? I like to spend my time indoors, but recently I've been interested in going out and experiencing this sort of stuff. And I wanted to ask if you guys had a certain activity that you could recommend to try first, or just to do a sort of trial and error and just try whatever and see how it goes.
I think day hikes are probably a really good kind of beginning point to go from, because the only thing you need is a backpack full of, snacks, water, hydration, and all that stuff, and a really nice place to go. And you can pick out anywhere you can go to, especially because we're in Sacramento. We're central to a lot of places, especially in California. You've got, Tahoe on the eastern side as well as the coast on the western side. So I mean, you have a lot of freedom in kind of deciding where you want to go. And I think day hikes are actually a really good way of starting off your outdoor adventures.
Hi, I have a question. So when the pandemic hit, I used to go to the rinks and roller skate a lot. I do a lot of roller skating, and when pandemic hit, obviously roller swings closed. Had to figure out somewhere to go to roller skate, and you might have seen a lot of roller skaters went straight for the tennis courts. And there was a time I went also into the tennis courts, and I do have a question because one time I got approached and actually just got yelled at for roller skating in the tennis courts, just totally yelled at. And I was just like, in my roller skates, like I got them made so I can ride anywhere. I have a question, like, how would you guys go about like anybody who just decides to be like full on just start yelling at you outdoors and like those type of situations?
That's kind of a tough one, like when confrontation happens, especially, when different people are trying to use different area or the same area for different uses. I'm sure it was just probably a miscommunication. It's hard to like remain calm when somebody's yelling at you. And I think we've all like experienced that in some capacity. But I think just, trying to be calm and having an open conversation with somebody, be like, hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but my skates are made for all surfaces. But again, some people aren't willing to listen. So sometimes it's just easier to walk away from situations like that.
Just to add on, hi, I'm a tennis coach. Tennis courts have like a lot of levels or layers of resurfacing, and some people are kind of picky about their courts and they want to see like the ball markings on the courts instead of like lines. So any wheels that are on the court, like a lot of tennis players would be like, hey, stop that. And usually they're like at a far away distance, so it may seem like they're yelling. Um, but yeah, confrontation is difficult. I would just stop and um, if I can ask why, but usually just walk away from it.
Awesome. Does anybody else have any other questions before we close up here? We are getting close to the end of the hour.
I would just like to say I love Peak Adventures. I've done the rock climbing course, and I've done like everything at the outdoors, and I've done team building exercises, and also got my bike fixed just recently. So I love Peak Adventures.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I guess kind of to close us off, we mentioned that a lot of our trips are geared towards beginners, so definitely look at those. Tanner threw in the chat that we do have a scholarship available. If anybody has a cost barrier, we have the information available on our website. There's a link here in the chat. And also, if you just go to our website, I'm sure you'll be able to locate it as well. I do believe it's a quick essay. We do have our scholarship committee here as well. So we're looking forward to reading your guys' essays and what the outdoors means to you guys. So take a look at that. I believe it covers up to 75% of the cost of a trip of your choosing. There is some exclusions to that, so just make sure you read through those. And for those of you who need LI credit, there is also a link available for that. Go ahead and follow that. And then we will be putting a survey in the chat for those of you that would like to participate in that. Your opinion means so much to us, and it'll help us in the future when we do this event again. Any questions from anybody?
Just a comment. Thanks so much for having this panel. I'm in the RPTA grad program, and these are the issues and topics that we talk about. And it's not just outdoors, but like any like recreation area, like these happen. And yeah, it's great to learn more about people that have been in the field.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Awesome. All right. Thank you to all the panelists. Your guys' opinions and comments were great. Thank you to everybody who showed up. Go ahead and follow the links as you need them. And we hope everybody has a great day. Visit our website or stop by in person if you want to learn more about what we do.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. Have a great one, guys.
Did you want us to stay after, or we're free to go?
You're good to go.
Oh,
Thank you
okay.
so much. Like
Okay.
I said, I have that swag bag for you if you want to swing by the office whenever you're on campus.
Peak Adventures merge.
Cool.
Awesome. Yep.
Make sure David and Maceo don't have any questions. Maceo, Leadership Initiative Survey. Yeah, when you do the survey, just make sure you put your student ID at the bottom of it. That's how we link it up to your account. Cool. I think we're good. David, did you have a question too? You might be AFK. All right. Thanks, guys. Hope to see you around.
How late is Peak Adventures open?
We're open till 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
You don't have to
be
come
right
by
at
today
5.
though. Whenever works for you. We're open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Cool. Adios.
Bye, guys.
Let me stop the recording.